Hey, what's happening, everybody? This is Jeff from Black Note Music, and I'm here to talk to you today about my song Firestarter, which premiered at the beginning of this month on the New Wave Traditional Heavy Metal YouTube channel, and I just dropped a really badass music video for that song, fully animated by my good friends Eric Ray and Jacob LeBlanc. Jacob is a very good singer for an awesome band called Arc and Fire out in Kelowna, BC. So give them a follow, and of course Eric Ray runs the Metal as Medicine blog. So thanks a lot, and go give that video a watch. I think you'll enjoy it. So one of the really special things about the song Firestarter is it features my first ever guest performer, Evgeny Gromovoy, the drummer from the power metal band ADAMANTIS, an excellent band. They are label mates with my band Gatekeeper on Cruz del Sur Music, and they released a killer record last year called Far-Flung Realms. And Evgeny laid down some skins for me on this tune, and he did a bang-up job. So let's dive on the session here. This is what it sounds like. Cool. Hey, so one of the main things that I wanted to talk about in this session was the fact that this is my first time in this solo endeavor of mine that I've gotten to work with live drums. I've always been using programmed drums up until this point, and I've been very satisfied with how they've turned out, but it's definitely a whole new beast when you get the real thing in your session. So it's, of course, it has a very distinct flavor that you can't really 100% replicate, and it's a lot of fun. Of course, it has its own set of challenges. So my goal with this song, when I lined up the live drums, was to make the song sound like a really tight band playing live in front of you in a beautifully acoustically treated room. Like, I really wanted to pull out a live performance vibe with this tune as much as I could. Of course, in a produced way, of course. So, let's get into the session here a little bit. I'm just going to kind of give you a rundown. I mean, there's like about 70 some odd tracks here, and if you've watched my Beyond the Arch rundown, I kind of go through my routing and my organization. I don't want to get into that too much, but as you can see, I've got an instrument folder here, and that has everything that the band would be playing on stage. I've got the Aka or acapella group, which is all the vocals, and then I've got post. And post is anything like synthesizers, effects, impact, subdrops, anything to add a little bit of extra oomph to the song that's not really like a musical sound. Okay, so let's crack open the drums here. Now, the engineer who recorded these drums, and unfortunately his name escapes me, so that's my bad, did a bang-up job working on these drums. He sent me a lot of tracks, which is super fun. So in here, I've got the brass folder. That's anything that's a cymbal is going to go in here. So as you can see, I've got ride, I've got mono overhead, I've got overhead left and overhead right, and that all just goes into the brass folder, which has some processing on it, which we'll go over in a second here. So here's what just the brass sounds like. We'll head over to a part. Okay, so, on its own, not the most amazing sounding thing you've ever heard. However, in the context of the mix here, let's pull this up. Sounds great. It does exactly what it needs to do. It creates energy, it creates push and pull and momentum and high-end explosiveness from the drum kit, which is exactly what you need. So I've got a ride cymbal, which I have panned all the way to the right because it's on the right-hand side of the kit. And I've also hard panned my overhead left and overhead right 100% in their respective directions for a nice wide picture of the kit. And then the mono, of course, stays dead down the center. And one of the challenges with working with live drums is you have to deal with, bleed in the hi-hat, and like some cymbals might be a little bit louder than others depending on the drummer's proclivities in their playing, and just like bleed in the cymbals in general. So now there's a couple things that I like to do with my overheads here. I like to apply a bit of compression to overheads depending on what I'm trying to do here. So I've got like the Purple Audio. This is like an 1176 plugin, and it's a very fast plugin. As you can see, I've got the attack as slow as possible, so it kind of catches, or rather doesn't catch, but it sort of lets as much of the sound through and as possible. But then the release is very fast, so it kind of gives you this interesting push and pull in the sound. Just kind of, when you drop it out, the cymbals just kind of go limp for a second. There's a volume boost in there, but there's also a lot. There's kind of brings out a lot of energy and a lot of aggression. A little bit makes the cymbals sound a little bit more explosive, right? So I do like a little bit of compression on my cymbals. It can be just a ticket sometimes. Of course, one common issue with cymbals is you will often have harsh resonances from ringing cymbals, or little nodes in the room and harmonics that ring out and things like that. So you generally got to do some EQ. I've got let's just listen to this without the EQ here for a second. Ooh. Okay. So there's actually a lot going on here because there's a lot of low end. There's a lot of double kicks in this song. One thing I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of take out some of that low end information so that it doesn't clutter up the bottom end of the mix too much. So my filter roll off is almost to 300. It's like 280 hertz. It's getting up there a little bit. I've also got the highs rolled down a little bit so that I can kind of add them back in a more controlled way later on. And I've got just a little nudge, a little high shelf from about 10K up. Then I got this guy here, so 4.3 kilohertz. Let me just put that back in and then pull it back out. Ugh. So that 4K region gets very nasty very, very quickly. I generally have to pull out something in that realm from overheads, rooms, distorted guitars, sometimes vocals and bass and things like that, synthesizers. It's a nasty region, builds up very quickly. So as you can see, I've got a 6.5 decibel cut from that area there. I've also got a cut coming down here from around the 650 range. Probably a little bit of honkiness, a little bit of nasal quality to that kit. Oh yeah. Kind of pulling out that wind tunnel sound a little bit. And then I've also got a cut here at 450. That's where a lot of that like kind of boxiness, like it sounds like you're talking inside a cardboard box. There's kind of a veil of sound that can kind of cloud up your mix in this region as well. Again, just when you add that back in, it's like you're in a wind tunnel. It's just all this like whoosh, 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 and it's just kind of useless noise. It just doesn't need to be there, So you just you thin that out, and again, on its own, doesn't sound that great, but in the context of the mix, it just really comes alive and just kind of gives the drums that edge that it needs, right? I had some additional EQ here, just kind of doing some more cleanup. As you can see here, there's a little spike around the 7K range. Again, 7K gets very zingy. That's another like problematic frequency in like the higher mids. Guitars can have some resonances up there. Vocals can get very sibilant, which is a problem that I have with my voice a lot of the time. And yeah, cymbals in particular get very zingy up there. So as you can see, I'm almost doubling down. I'm kind of taking these moves and going like another step further with them with this plugin. I felt like I needed just a little bit more because I'm seeing a lot of similar areas. I got a low shelf at 277 over here. I've got another thing in this like 580, 600 range. I've got some more harshness, 3.5. So yeah, kind of doubling down on some moves. Okay, and then I get this guy here. Again, just to kind of like really clean this up and really make this nice, I got Soothe on here. Now, Soothe is a very fancy, elegant plugin. It's also a little on the expensive size. I actually kind of saved up and splurged for this guy here. And it's just a way to kind of do that last 5-10% bit of cleanup on a harsh source. It's got a lot of problems that are very dynamic. Not problems, but just a lot of little buildups and resonances that just, depending on how hard you set this, it can just give you that extra 5% and just really make it sound that extra little bit more polished and pro. So I'll take some of this stuff off here. Hear that? It's subtle, but it's just dampening a little bit of that hi-hat zap that's coming into your ears. It's just kind of taking a little bit of that edge off so that it doesn't sound so fatiguing over time. That was all the EQ taken out. And all the EQ back in. There we go. Okay, now we get to the real fun stuff. So one of the challenges that I had with this mix is Evgeny's got 2 hi-hats on his kit. And one of the problems was one of those hi-hats was quite a bit louder than the others. I'm not sure if that was a miking thing or if Evgeny is just kind of hammering one of those hi-hats harder than he does on the other one. I'm not sure, but one of them was quite loud. So I actually have a couple plugins here that are doing what's known as a side chain. Basically, anytime that the snare drum hits, and I'll tell you the reason the loud hi-hat is a problem, not just because it can kind of disrupt the balance of the kit a little bit, but it's also a problem because it really eats into the attack and the snap and the clarity of the snare drum and other elements as well. But the snare drum in particular gets weakened by a super exceedingly loud hi-hat. So here's what I got. I have a compressor that is side-chained, and it's side-chained to the snare drum. And as you can see, I've got these purple dips that are kind of pulling this area down. I'll just kind of let it play here for a sec. You can kind of see it getting pulled down. Let me take it off. Whoa. Hear how loud that hi-hat is without this side chain engaged? Wow. It's almost shocking, actually, like how big of a difference it is. And so it's I'm glad that I was able to pull this off. But basically what's happening here is anytime the snare drum gets hit, these frequency ranges that I've specified with these purple cones basically are getting tugged down. So every time that hi-hat strikes, that gets very harsh and zappy, gets tugged down, so the hi-hat is getting kind of pulled out of the way every time it senses the snare drum coming in. So that's a problem that you'll have to solve pretty often, especially when you're working with live drums, where every room is different, every drummer is different, every mic setup is going to be a little bit different, and you just have to be prepared to solve some problems once in a while when you're in a mix. All right, so that's kind of my overhead setup there, and I don't really have a lot of processing on the individual drum elements. I just have some volume control, some gain staging, this ride cymbal, which we haven't actually heard from yet. Let's skip over to the ride cymbal. Oops, one more time. So the ride cymbal, it's just kind of popping in for a little bit of flavor every once in a while, just a little bit of spice. It's not doing anything too crazy, and all I was really doing was just kind of adding a little high-end air on top of that, just to kind of give it a bit more clarity and just a little bit more energy up top. So nothing too crazy going on there. I mean, that pretty much covers all of the cymbal stuff. Now we get into shells. Shells are fun. I put all of the actual drums, like the kick, the snare, and the toms. Those all get routed into a shells folder, which has a few things. It's got like a bus compressor. It has I put a little bit of saturation, like a little bit of distortion on there, just to kind of bring out some aggression and clarity. Let's just have a listen to the shells for a second. Shells sound cool. So you can kind of hear as I disengage and re-engage these two plugins. There's a bit of a volume boost to kind of help it catch up with the rest of the band, but also it's a lot more aggressive and slamming. It's more in your face when I engage the bus compressor. The bus compressor is set so that the attack is very slow. As slow as this one will go, at least 30 milliseconds, and the release is as fast as it'll go, which basically means that those really fast drum hits are going to come in, and then the compressor is going to release and basically cause all of those initial transients, all those initial impacts of those kick and snare and toms to like just kind of snap you in the face just a little bit harder, right? And then the black box piece here, this is a great little saturation plugin, and it just adds a little bit of high-end nastiness and low-end thump, and just kind of helps your drums push and cut and gives them a nice little sizzle. Now, Evgeny has got two kick drums, which having two separate kick drums might sound like a pain in the ass for mixing and recording, but it's actually kind of nice because it gives you a little bit more control over the volumes and a little bit more control over like EQ and things like that. There's a lot of fun tricks that you can do when you have twin kick pedals here. And I to be honest, I didn't do too much with them. I kind of left them as is. Now, one thing that I did do with the kick and the snare is I did add some sample reinforcements to just help them compete with the rest of the mix elements here. So let's just have a quick listen. Here are the kicks. Okay, so that's just the sample on its own. Not a great sample sound, but it doesn't need to be great on its own. What it needs to do is it needs to augment the real kick. So you can hear when I add that real kick back into it, like all that oomph and all of that like kick you in the chest, feeling comes back. So really all that the sample is doing is just adding a little bit of clarity so that the kick drum attack and the presence will cut through on smaller speakers, just give it a tiny bit more consistency. But the real meat and potatoes of this kick drum is coming from the real kicks. Yeah, it's a pretty cool kick sound actually. It's very, very thwacky, which I like. And of course, on my kicks, I've talked about this in the past. I like to distort my drum shells quite a bit. So I've got decapitator on here. It's set to 50%. Mix knob is back at 30. I've got some EQ on here, just kind of cleaning up a little bit of low end and low mids. So as you can see, I've got like a big cut around the 180 range. There's a little bit of buildup happening in there. In fact, why don't we just have a listen to it really quick? Here's the kick. Just takes away all that extra gunk that we weren't using. The reason that I have a cut here and I have another much sharper cut at 74 is because that's where the dark fundamental of the bass guitar is going to sit. The bass guitar is going to kind of land at this 75 hertz right around D2. That's where your bass guitar is striking. And then of course my rhythm guitar is kind of up an octave from here, kind of in this 180 to 160 range. That's where like the fundamental of my rhythm guitar on the low D is chugging away. I don't want the low end of the kick to be competing with those elements. I want those elements to be heard, so I kind of carve space out for them. And of course, I just need to kind of clean up that kick sound a little bit anyways. There's just a little bit too much of that wool in there, right? Oh yeah, let's hear what it sounds like without the distortion as well. It's subtle. It's not doing a huge amount, but it is adding just a little bit of zazz, just a little bit of aggression and edge to those kicks, and just making them sound a little bit more pleasant to my ears. And then I've got another EQ. So I will often EQ in two stages. This isn't uncommon for me. I will often have an EQ where I make cuts and I kind of carve the stuff that I don't want out of the sound. And then sometimes I'll bust out a second EQ so that I can add in the stuff that I want to enhance. Sometimes you just got to do it in two stages, and by doing it in two stages and using two different kinds of plugins for that, like the SSL strip here, it can kind of help me stay organized and kind of give me a method to the madness a little bit here. So here is the this is the sculpting, the fun EQ. Okay, here we go. So without it, the sound is pretty clean. You know, the kicks are very clear, but they're just a little bit, I'm not going to say flaccid, but they're just not like, they're not hitting you. They're not propelling the energy, or they're not propelling the song forward like they should. So as you can see, I added in a little bit of highs, like 8K. I went all the way up to 8K on this boost, and I'm boosting about 5 dB there. That's so that you can just hear the kick attack and that like click of the beater smashing into the skin there. And that's also going to really help your kicks come through on small speakers like on your phone and shit, right? I've got some more upper end attack here, adding a little bit of 6K. I'm also adding some 1.5K, so just like some mid-range presence. And again, shaving out just a little bit of low end and adding, of course, some SSL compression. Hey, there we go. There he is. Nice. And I don't know why I did this, but it looks like I added some more EQ to this. Now, this is a move that I don't normally do. I must have been messing around and just kind of came up with something that I liked by accident. Let's take a look. Oh, interesting. This is very interesting, actually. I don't remember what I did here, but I'm liking what I'm hearing. This is fun. Yeah. Sounds very hollow. Then all of a sudden... Yeah! I think I'm just adding in... I think what happened is, when I was making all those various cuts to the low end, I realized that I was losing a lot of the balls and a lot of the propulsion of the kick drum. And so instead of going back and try to redo everything, I just said, fuck it, and I just added in a third EQ stage. And, yeah, sometimes that happens. Sometimes you can just you can go back and you can like retweak and redo everything, or sometimes you can just be like, you know what, let me just get another fun EQ to just kind of do some broad strokes. So I think this is me trying to artfully fill in some of the gaps that I had left with my problem solving. Again, it's possible to take stuff away and then add it back in a more controlled and pleasing way. So that's what's happening here. Totally. Yeah, sounds way thicker. Sounds like a real kick drum. It's great. And doing a little bit of clipping. Not much, actually. Hey, okay, yeah, I'm pushing the volume by about a dB, and I'm just trimming, I'm just shaving off the peaks, so that just to prevent a little bit of fatigue as you're listening to double kicks for like 5 minutes straight. Yeah, nothing too crazy there. Oh, okay, yeah, so now there's a fourth EQ, but this has a very distinct purpose for being here. This EQ is automated. I wonder if I can find this automation in the menu here. It's got to be around. Oh, here we go. There it is. Let me just open this up here. So, whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. There we go. Okay, so now you notice that I've got some automation happening here in these areas where the double kicks are just raging. So what's happening here is when the double kicks are just going at full bore, I'm actually cutting a more low end because there's just a lot of buildup in that like sub 200 hertz region. However, when it goes into like a more standard kick drum pattern, you can see that the plugin is disengaged. So I'm automating it. I'm telling it to turn on and telling it to turn off when I don't want it anymore. So it's just shaving out about 3 decibels of just low-end energy that's building up and boom, 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 taking over the mix when those double kicks are raging, and not in a fun way. So again, a lot of little problem solving to do. This isn't just a live drums thing. This is just kind of a double kick thing in general. All right, so that was the kick. Let's talk snares. I talk about snares a lot. Let's talk about snares. Let's see what I got here. I can't even remember what I did to this. I like that snare. That sounds pretty good, I think. So I also did a sample on this one. Let's have a listen to the sample. That's the original one. You know what? I leaned a bit heavier onto the sampled snare in this one. I remember because there was a lot of hi-hat bleed, and it was a little bit difficult to work with. And I think that I found that the easiest way to solve that problem was to just bring out a snare sound that I knew would be super appropriate, one that fit the kit sound. I think that Evgeny would be pretty happy to have this snare sound. So the real snare is in there, and it is kind of adding this nice little organic bloom to the sound, a little bit more of like a room ambience. But I am leaning a little bit heavier on the sampled snare in this example. So sorry, Evgeny, but I'll show you why. Here's the original snare again, and I have a gate on here already, but let's take the gate off. You hear that? That's with the gate off. That's gate on. So even with the gate going, it's there's a lot of hi-hat in that sound, and I'm sure I fiddled with this for quite some time before eventually settling on the sample route. Yeah, look, I even loaded up an EQ and just kind of like didn't do anything to it in the end. All right, so yeah, there's a lot of hi-hat in that snare. And I just said, you know what, at the end of the day, you just need a badass snare sound. So that's what I did. I put one together. There's probably a handful of samples compiled into that sampled sound, and I couldn't tell you what they are off the top of my head. But let's look at the processing that I did on that snare drum. There's a bunch of stuff here. Okay, let's see what's going on. Let me just take it all off. Okay. So even without the processing, it's still kind of a cool snare sound. But it's very dark and woolly, and kind of has like a bit of a cardboard box kind of thing going on. Aha! Wakey wakey. There it is. All right. So I have my carving EQ out here, like I was describing a bit earlier, taking out the stuff I don't want, taking out some low end here so that the fundamental, the snare drum, can bloom out in this way. It's a pretty Evgeny had a pretty low tuned snare, if I recall. So the fundamental, actually no, it's like, yeah, the fundamental is kind of hanging out around that like 180 hertz range. You often see snare drums in like the 200 range, but this one is 180, so it's like a little bit lower. I'm pulling out some 300 here, pulling out some 510. Let's pull the. Just kind of taking out that, like, that wind tunnel kind of sound I was describing. It looks like I got some harshness cuts here. Oh yeah. Yeah, it was just a little too snappy up there. Yeah, had to get rid of it. All right, Exciter. This is a fun stand back for Exciter. This is a fun plugin. I like this one. It's a multi-band distortion plugin. It's kind of like Decapitator, but you can choose which elements of the sound get the distortion. So as you can see here, the low, mid, and low end sliders. I don't even know why I have the mixed ones here. These are not being used, but I am adding some distortion in the upper mids and the treble with this guy. Let's have a listen. Aha! Yeah, you can really you can hear like the snare wires just coming alive in that section there when I activate the exciter. Yeah, this is doing a lot of heavy lifting, even though the mix knobs are at 50% or less, and the drive's not running very hot. This plugin is not very subtle in general. It's actually a pretty hot plugin. This is a great plugin. This Audio Assault stuff is pretty sweet, especially if you're on a budget. They often sell their plugins for like $5 to $15 a pop. It's pretty reasonable for what these are for. And these are for heavy music. So yeah, this really makes the snare drum come alive. You get that room sound, like just a whoa, whoa, whoa. You get the sound of the snares, like the wires buzzing. It just really like grabs you. I like this a lot. It makes it sound like you're actually in the room with like a ripping hot snare drum. All right, so I have my fun EQ, which isn't actually doing a lot here. Adding a little bit of top end, touch of compression. Oh, I'm sucking out some low end, some lows as well. Looks like I needed a little bit less low end. Interesting. Sounds like it's doing a lot more than it actually is. Yeah, it's just a bit of compression. I am adding a bit of distortion on this end of it too. But yeah, okay, cool. Another EQ stage, another fun one. I think when I was doing this mix, I think I was just really into this Ignite Amps Pultec EQ. I think I was just having a lot of fun with it and just probably trying it on everything to see what would happen. I do actually use this on snare from time to time. Nowadays, it's a pretty versatile. This is actually a free plugin, by the way. I use a handful of fancy, expensive plugins, but I also use a lot of cheap and like free shit. This is one of my favorite free plugins ever. It's a great Pultec. So adding some 6K, also bringing some of the really high end air down, adding some 3K, some bite and some aggression. Dipping down the 500 mid-range, doing a bit of filtering. Okay, this one, let's have a listen to this. That's interesting. It's changing the character. Like the snare drum still sounds like the same snare drum, but it is kind of giving you a few different colors of it. I'm a bit curious. Let's throw it back into the mix and just turn it on and off. Interesting. It's pretty subtle in the mix. Actually, I like it either way. I could probably turn this one off and have a grand old time. I do feel like the sizzle on this one is a bit more controlled and it's a bit more focused sounding, a little bit more refined. The other ones maybe when you take it off, it's a bit more raw sounding. So that's interesting. That's interesting. Here's another Audio Assault plugin. This is their reverb. This is like a digital reverb plugin that I've got on the snare drum here. This mix knob is real low. It's like 7-8%. Drum hall, kind of driving the input a little bit hotter. Let's have a quick listen to that. That's interesting. Even at only 8%, that reverb is actually pretty noticeable. That's kind of cool. Although I am driving hot into it. Okay, yeah, when I put the drive down to 0 on that, the input knob rather, down to 0, it actually comes down quite a bit. So that's kind of cool. That is a fun thing that you can do with some plugins is you can like push your signal into the input harder, which will make the plugin react more intensely to your sound, which is a fun trick that you can do sometimes. That's what a lot of plugins that are trying to emulate analog hardware will do that, which is kind of what this one is. So that's fun. That's fun. Fun effect. Oh, okay, interesting. Okay, so when I put the reverb on, this is a move that I do a lot. Now that I'm thinking about it, when I put the reverb on to the snare drum, I was getting a little bit too much fundamental, a little bit too much of that, like that low end bloom of the snare drum. So I was pulling a little bit of that out, about 2 decibels worth at 180. Hear how cloudy it is when I take that EQ move off? Yeah, it just kind of lifts the veil off of it a little bit. And another thing that I do a lot of with snare drums, clipping it down. I use clipping a lot on snare drums because a cool sounding snare drum can get very nasty very, very quickly if you're not keeping it under control. And clipping is a wonderful way to do that. You're just literally saying that, yeah, anything above this level is just getting clipped off. And it's a great way to just kind of trim those peaks and make sure that it doesn't start to sound like you're being like this, like having your eardrums just bludgeoned, you know? And then looks like I have to trim the volume down a little bit more from that point on. Okay, cool. That's your snare drum. All right. From there, we're moving into the toms. Okay, so now Evgeny's got 5 toms. Jesus Christ. Another thing about live drums is that you got to work with the setup that the drummer's got. I mean, I'm sure that if I had asked Evgeny to not use 5 toms, I'm sure he would have done so, you know, because he's a professional and he's good at what he does. But I just kind of let him do. I basically just sent him the song. I sent him like my program drums that I came up with as like a kind of a starting point for him to kind of get some ideas from. But the drumming that he came up with was reasonably different from what I sent him, and it was very, very cool. He had like a nice interpretation of these beats. Yeah, again, 5 toms. I don't normally work with 5 toms even when I'm programming drums. So that was kind of fun. Having 5 toms is fun because you can kind of get a nice stereo spread on them. I'm not going like hard pan. I'm kind of going from 40 on like the far tom, and then kind of progressively going in closer to the center. I think I was trying to match where the stereo placement of the toms were in the overhead mics, if I recall correctly. Let's have a quick listen to the toms here. I did not sample replace these. I kept them as is. Cool. I also went through and I cut out all of the extra sound. As you can see here, like the toms are just like you're literally only hearing the toms. And then it's gone. Then it's nothing, right? I do that by hand. I manually go in and we call this gating the toms. Some people will just throw in a noise gate to kill that noise floor, as we call it, from the ambient sound of the drums being smacked in the tom mics. But I just go in and cut it out by hand because I can just have more control over it that way. But yeah, I did not sample replace these. I thought they sounded pretty cool. I liked what he did with them quite a bit. Looks like I've got some processing on the tom folder, and then it looks like I've got a little bit of individual EQ on each tom, which makes sense because each tom is tuned to its own separate pitch. So I wanted to make sure that I was giving each tom the attention that it deserved. So we're probably going to see a lot of similar moves on each of these, but in different frequency ranges. So yeah, looks like I've got this I've got like a 420 hertz cut, getting rid of some cardboard boxiness. Looks like I got SSL compression on here, some low end filtering. We're probably going to see similar stuff on all of these toms. Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, similar kind of cuts here, although a bigger cut. Let's have a listen to this tom, actually. This one I did a lot too. Set up a little loop here. Ah. That's better? Ah, okay, a little bit better. All right, sweet. So, yeah, cutting out a lot of that, like, washy kind of sound, again, that air tunnel effect, that like you're just standing like underneath a bridge and just listening to highway traffic zooming overhead. Adding in a lot of high end, adding in some upper mid presence, filtering out the lows, compressing. Yeah, looks like this tom just needed a little bit more to push it over the edge. Let's check out tom 3. Oh, interesting. Tom 3. Tom 3's got a lot of the same stuff as Tom 2, actually, so take it out. Yeah. Yeah, so doing a lot of the same processing on Tom 3, just with the pitch range slightly different, it looks like. This is all pretty normal stuff for dealing with toms, by the way. This is like normal shit that you have to worry about. Just getting rid of some of that like ambient cardboardy kind of sound. Yeah, same thing here. Yeah, same thing. You can still hear some cymbal bleed coming through as well. That's kind of normal, though. You just got to learn to embrace a bit of that cymbal bleed when it happens, and just process the toms in a way where that cymbal bleed will just kind of blend in with the actual cymbal picture of the kit that you've put together. Tom 5, I imagine we're going to see more of the same. Yes, indeed. Yeah, lots of top end, some filtering, some compression, some low mid cuts. This is like a low ass floor tom. I actually find like floor toms to be the hardest to mix. I don't know why. I just have a lot of trouble. Not a lot of trouble, but like I have some trouble sometimes getting like the high end stick attack and air of that sound while also retaining like the balls that just kind of makes you go like boom boom boom. Sometimes like low floor toms can be a bit of a struggle for me, but I think it worked out pretty well in this one. Cool. Let's take a look at the folder processing. So this is stuff that's hitting all of the toms at once. We've got just kind of filtering out like some mass low end here. Yeah, just way too boomy across the board, so just take that out. Another instance of exciter. Again, just adding in a bit of high, mids, and treble across the board to give them some zazz. Yeah, it just makes them it really puts them in your face. Just like makes it sound like your eardrums are just like exploding from the righteous fury of Evgeny's toms, which I like. Okay, here's a fun plugin. I wanted some more attack from these toms. I wanted like more like snap. So I busted out another cool audio assault plugin called Multi-Transient. Let's have a listen. Cool. Actually, let's go to a different fill here. Let's go to this guy. There's a lot of drums in that fill. Boop, there we go. So you just get a little bit more snap. Not a lot, just a little bit more snap. Let's just crank this actually. Ooh. See, that's bordering on painful up there. Yeah, so just trying to get a little bit more snap. So this is just a transient designer. All you're doing is you can tell the attack to go up or down, so you can like make something sound sharper or make something sound more dull. You can also increase or decrease the sustain. I actually do have a little bit of sustain pulled out down here as well, just trying to get rid of some of that boominess, I imagine. We've got some reverb on the toms again, like pretty, not a lot of reverb. Room sound. Kind of dark, mix knobs at 9. Yeah, just trying to get them to blend into the kit a little bit more. And I have, what's going on here? To be honest, okay, looks like I'm doing a little bit of additional filtering with this SSL. I might not need this actually. No, actually, I agree with it. It just kind of dampens it just a little bit from getting too ice picky. Yeah, I think it's just a little bit of an extra safety function. Doing a bit of clipping here as well. Yeah, cool. So that's the toms, and then we get to the really fun stuff, the rooms. Now, one of the fun things about tracking live drums is miking the room. And if you are tracking live drums for your band, if you're recording demos, if you're recording albums, and you're not using room mics, I would strongly suggest getting into some room mics. And you don't need to, and you could just use cheap-ass mics to get you started, and just start putting them in random places and trying to add a little bit of ambience to your sound. One of the things that I really liked about working with Evgeny's drums is I got a lot of room mics. I got 5 room mics here. And this was a lot of fun because I can kind of blend them to my heart's content. And the room mics are a huge part of the drum picture, especially for going for this live band feeling. So let's have a listen to this room sound here. Let's go to the chorus, actually. Yeah! Let's just listen to the whole kit. Let's just do the drum kit for a sec. Boop. And let's just have a quick listen to the kit with and without the rooms. With rooms. Where'd they go, right? Oh my god. It sounds so much cooler with the rooms. Like, it sounds okay without the rooms. Like, it sounds like, oh, like it sounds almost like programmed drums, though. Like, it doesn't really sound like, I don't know. Again, when you put the rooms on, it sounds like you're at like a club watching this band play, and it's killer. It just adds so much life and aggression and explosiveness to the sound. So yeah, I was super grateful to have a bunch of room mics here. We got some halls. Let's have a listen to the hall sounds. Yeah, lots of echo in that one. I've got, what do we got here? We got some stereo close ones. Ooh, nice. Very fun for smashing with compressors. And we got mono room. Ooh. Again, just ripe for smashing with compression and all kinds of fun stuff. What did I do to these rooms? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, here we go. We've got Devil Lock, which is both distortion and compression. It's a really like this just, whatever you throw on it, it makes it sound disgusting. It's great for room mics. It's clean. Oh, now it's gross, but in a good way. Okay. We've got some EQ. Yeah, pulling out some harsh ranges, filtering out pretty heavily, taking out some mud and some cardboard. Let's check this out. Whoa! Just way too much. Way too much. Would sound cool if you're doing like some like intense like street punk demo or something like that, like live rehearsal thing, but a little bit too live maybe. Clean it up. Oh, and yes, we have more Soothe doing some hi-hat side chaining on here as well. So let's have a quick check here. Yeah. Yeah, just trying to cut out some of that, like, that really loud hi-hat that we were talking about a little bit earlier. It's the exact same move that I did on the overheads earlier. Just kind of allowing the snare drum to cut through. Looks like I did 2 stages, but one stage I must have abandoned. Maybe I thought I went a little bit too overboard with it. All right. So anyways, that's the drums. So those are all the stages that I went through to get Evgeny's kit really popping the way that I wanted it to just make sure that that his performance was given like the maximum amount of justice that it deserved. Yeah, so this is the full kit here. Let's have a quick listen. Yeah, he killed it, man. So good, so good. And with the rest of the guitar and bass in there. Nice. Nothing to see. You've got nothing to lose. Cool. Yeah, loved it. That is so much fun working with these live drums. So I think I'm going to call it here. I've been talking for a little while already, and really the drums were the centerpiece of this production for me. Aside, of course, from like the songwriting components and whatnot. But yeah, I spent a lot of time trying to sculpt these drum sounds and just get them sounding as like just as raucous and ridiculous and over the top power metal as possible. When Evgeny was describing his drum parts that he was coming up with, he said he wanted the song to punch you in the face. And so I took those words very seriously when I was working on this. So, Evgeny, thanks so much, man. Love you to pieces, dude. Your drumming really pushed this song over the edge, and I love it. It's been the best received song of all of the ones that I've done so far, and you're a big part of that, I think. So thank you so much. And to those of you who are watching, I hope you picked up a couple tricks, maybe a couple ideas for your own productions. If you have any questions, don't be shy. Hit me up. You can find me on Facebook, Black Note Music. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, and all that jazz. Yeah, don't be shy. And if you like what I do, and you want to have a song mixed or produced by me, or you want me to play guitar or sing on one of your tracks, of course, I would love to hear from you as well. So don't be shy. Drop me a line. And thanks. Thanks for everything. Cheers.